Wow, the Paulie Maligaggi interview that got him fired from Showtime Boxing is mysteriously gone off the internet. But don't fret, we're going to break it down in this here video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang, notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, the Cash App, and the Patreon family. We work in Patreon link. Sign up. You don't want to miss it. We work, and I'm having fun over there talking to you guys in the group session. I just did one. There's going to be some more stuff rolling out. Or you could also become a YouTube channel member by hitting the join button. Now, I made a video about this. Showtime Boxing has decided to part ways and or remove Paulie Maligaggi of duty. He's a longtime collaborator with the network, with Showtime, and he's a commentator on there for boxing, obviously being a former boxer, and they're no longer having him. They're permanently removing him, offering him some kind of severance package, and parting ways. This is all after Paulie Maligaggi had made racially charged comments that broke the internet, and I guess it got to the people up top, with Showtime and or CBS, which is the parent company, Viacom, CBS, and they gave Paulie Maligaggi, I guess, a way out. They said, you got to retract these statements, make a public apology, or we can't have you. And Paulie made his decision. So that shows you what type of person he is. He felt he didn't do anything wrong, so he stuck to his guns, and he decided to just end up like that. Now, I got a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm going to break this video into multiple parts because for the sake, so it's not too long, because I got a lot to say on this very subject. So stay tuned. We unpack. There's a lot of people who are making comments and remarks saying, oh, I don't think he said anything that bad, or Paulie Maligaggi, what did he do? He didn't say anything insensitive. We live in an overly sensitive society. They're saying these types of things like they can't understand it. And I find that ironic and funny. When you have the complexion for the protection, there seems to always be a back door or way out. This is just so bizarre. It just happened to a good guy and analyst, right? But that's not the reality in this particular situation. Paulie Maligaggi, he made his bed. He had an opportunity to recant or at least issue an apology, because you can't really take back words once you're a celebrity and they've left. But he had the opportunity. He chose not to. So, he's lucky and fortunate that Showtime and Viacom CBS even gave him that option to try to go back. So when the two parties, couldn't reach an agreement in terms of should he retract or recant or apologize, and he refused to, they said, all right, deuces. We live in a society where that can't be tolerated. You see it. You see Donald Trump always tweeting certain things and riling people up and racially charged situations. You see looting. You see peaceful protests. You see a mixture of both. We live in different times where we have a pandemic. People are scared. People are wearing masks out. And ultimately, you got to be conscientious of what you put out there as a celebrity. And it's so funny to see during these times that people continue to put themselves in harm's way, lose business opportunities, and lose money and potential livelihood and earnings because they just can't not say whatever they needed to say or they thought they needed to say. Paulie Maligaggi, add him to the list. Now, the funny thing is this: for all of those people who are saying, I don't see what he did wrong. He didn't say anything bad. I don't think this is racially charged or racist or whatever. My question to you is this. See, this is why old media can never beat new media. Simple logic. It always trumps. Facts always trump fiction. In the end, it's going to always trump, truth versus lies and stuff like that. My question to you guys is this: if Paulie Maligaggi simply, he was living his best life and, you know, practicing his freedom of speech and he did nothing wrong, then why is the video taken down? As you guys can see, the video is taken down. This was an interview done with the UK YouTube channel, right? I'll put the link in the description, and they put it private because they hid the video, or they were told to hide the video. Why hide the video if you have nothing to hide? So they should either delete the video, because if you delete a video, it doesn't say private, but they probably want to retain whatever viewership because it'll get knocked against your YouTube numbers. So you're kind of in a pickle right here. You should either free the video up. If he didn't say anything wrong, release the video and make it public again so people can watch and listen to what Paulie Maligaggi said, right? Instead of hiding it so nobody can hear it. So I'll put the link in the description, but the host and the owner of this YouTube channel should really make that decision. You know, he didn't say anything wrong. That's what old media is saying. They're saying he didn't do anything wrong. So let the people judge and leave comments and stuff like that. Instead, they took the easy way out. You know, I don't want to be bothered by it. Or somebody made a phone call and said, hey, take that video down. But the ironic thing and the funny thing is this. The damage is already done. You already got pieced out by Showtime. What are you taking the video down? I would just let that bang. Let it ride. Truth is out. The cat's out the bag. You lost your job. Man, how the hell you get fired on your day off? You was building a clubhouse. You was stealing boxes. Like, what's the point to take it down now? The damage is done. So I think they should free the video up. Now, fortunately, you know, I got some excerpts from what he said and some audio from what he said so you guys can hear. But again, there's a lot of people who aren't qualified to even be speaking on these situations because they're not well versed with the information. So that's why you have us. That's why you have me, New Media. All the Karen stuff, and he got
discussion because it's just going to create division. But if Devin is going to be the one to bring it up, I don't know if Devin got the memo, but it's no longer the time of the African American anymore in boxing. It's no longer the time of the African American anymore in boxing. It's the Eastern European that has become the dominant species in boxing. You know, so I think saying something like that could actually be very dangerous. It shouldn't be about race, but if you're going to bring it to race, right now there is no one better in boxing than Europeans. And last time I checked, they were white. So it's if you're going to go there, you have to kind of put it into proper context.
So that's just a snippet of what he said. And I don't know how clear that was for you guys, but he says it is no longer the time of the African American fighter. Like basically those days are numbered. Then the dominant species, this is what he said. This is his words. The dominant species in boxing is the Eastern European fighter. What? Are we being real? Like that's really what he said? The dominant species. So let's talk a little bit about linguistics, because I'm big on words. When you're saying species, you're making it sound like African American people are of a different, species, biology.
Species.
A group of living organisms consisting in similar individuals. So when you're saying the Eastern European is the dominant species, you make it, that sounds like supremacist talk. You're saying they're the dominant species as if African American fighters aren't of the same DNA and makeup, So that already sounds weird. But beyond that is, if you listen to Paulie's comments, what part of that is true? Like, cite some sources, some examples, because in recent boxing, we've seen Terrence Crawford beat Victor Postal, who's Eastern European. He's from Ukraine. We've seen Andre Ward not once, but twice defeat Sergey Kovalev, who's Eastern European from Russia. We have a great fight on Paulie's ex-network, Showtime, with Jamal Charlo and Sergey Deryevchenko. We have to see how that plays out, right? You also have the issue of Devin Haney wanted to fight a Ukrainian fighter, Vasyl Lomachenko, but it was that Ukrainian fighter and his team and his promotional outfit, Top Rank, that reached out to the WBC to make him the franchise champion, so he didn't even have to be bothered by the African-American fighter, Devin Haney, which is something that I've brought up numerous times on my channel. So what is Paulie even talking about? Listen, there's a lot of great fighters from everywhere in all walks of life. But if you're going to make a bold statement like that, please define it. Let us know what examples you have of that, where, you know, he made it sound like black fighters, African-American fighters are now becoming obsolete to Eastern European fighters. When did this happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, he said the dominant fighters are white. Wilder, he knocked out Artur Szpilka. He's from Poland. You know, when did this happen? And he says, I don't know if Devin Haney got the memo. Now, the irony in Paulie Maligaggi's statements, and him putting his foot in his mouth with statements like that he has made, is Paulie Maligaggi was actually phoned up to do an interview to discuss statements that Devin Haney made. But if you look at it, Devin Haney's interview, he said something like, I don't know if it was an ode to B-Hop or if he just felt it out of his own mouth. He said, I would never lose to a white boy. Like, I would not lose to a white fighter, a white boy, right? And the irony is people try to make that and spin that like, oh, Devin Haney, he needs to apologize. He's racist. So the black fighter must apologize for saying I'll never lose to a white boy, right? Historically, the term white boy, right, is not something like the N-word. In fact, they have a 2018 film called White Boy Rick. You know what I'm saying? This is not like the N-word. You don't really see a film, you know, that goes to the theater titled the N-word, N-I-G-G-E-R. You know what I mean? So Devin Haney, you know, people sweated Devin Haney and said he must apologize. I can't believe it. And it's hilarious that you had every website write articles. Look at DAZN, Insider.com, CNN, everybody, like the CNN, everybody was talking about this. Undefeated boxer Devin Haney denies being racist. So he was made to have to, I guess, face the music over these comments that he would, quote, never lose to a white boy. But you have Paulie Maligaggi, his response, and you didn't see this much. Look, I will never lose to a white boy. People seem more offended by this. And those same people, did they do articles for what Paulie Maligaggi said? Or did they just leave it to new media and others like the LDBC to discuss those different issues in the sport of boxing? It's looking so shaky for old media, man. It really is. So realistically, Devin Haney, he didn't even begin to touch on some of the sensitive and the tasteless comments that Paulie Maligaggi has made. Like, again, first of all, if you're speaking something that's statistically true, then that would be one thing. But he said the best fighters are white and the Eastern European is the dominant species. So if that's what it is, how are they a different species than African American? That sounds weird. But what about Mexican fighters? You know, so you mean to tell me that European, I kind of lump European and Eastern European together because he also said white, right? Every time Canelo Alvarez fights somebody, he's fought a lot of British fighters. Matthew Hatton, Ryan Rhodes, Liam Smith, Amir Khan. He beat all of those. The guy he lost to was African American, Floyd Mayweather. That's his only loss. But every time he fights the British guys that he fought, the European fighters that he's fought, he's beaten them. Rocky Fielding, Liam Smith, Amir Khan. This is statistically something you can show. I can pull up his box rec right now and show you this. So between that and the examples I provided earlier, what is Paulie Maligaggi talking about? You know, saying that white fighters or Eastern European or European fighters they've taken over boxing. Who? Like I said, Kovalev lost to a black fighter, black and white, biracial fighter, Andre Ward. And he lost to Eliter Alvarez. I believe he's Colombian, darker complected. So what fighter is just like a baseless statement? He said it. And what made it worse for Paulie Maligaggi is he also, in addition, see, there's a lot of people who aren't telling the truth and they're spinning it. Or they lack the knowledge, and they're not, like I said earlier, they're not qualified to speak on behalf of this subject. But it was like a tangent of racially charged comments that Paulie Maligaggi made in a small space of time. And like I told you on my channel, this is the worst time for that. And this was quickly shown. The irony in this whole situation is Paulie Maligaggi, he made these statements. He also made statements saying that systematic racism doesn't exist. And literally a few weeks later, you seen on tape the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, right? As well as George Floyd. And this man is telling you that there's no systematic racism, right? And we seen this back to back, and Breonna Taylor back to back. So this made Paulie Maligaggi's whole statement sound ludicrous. And then Paulie wants to double down because he's a prideful person, and maybe he has some personal demons, that we'll get to later. And this made him look extremely bad. How can you say there's no systemic racism and try to shame Devin Haney? And we're looking at all these pictures. And not only did we do this, the whole world reacted. When back to back people got fed up seeing this disgusting video. They were fed up. They're like, nah. You also see pro athletes. This was just yesterday. LeBron James, fist in the air. Everybody, Black Lives Matter. What's your purpose in life? To create change, motivate, and inspire others are some of mine. I just hope I continue to make y'all proud. Love you all. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag thank you Kaepernick, who's been on this wave as well. Hashtag justice for Breonna Taylor. Right? So in Paulie's world, people are just doing this just for no reason, because according to him, none of this stuff actually exists. It's all made up. And I'm going to save some of it for another video, but these are just a few quick examples. And now you've seen big companies jump in and have to put out statements that they're with Black Lives Matter. Everybody did the Tuesday, the Blackout Tuesday, and there's a lot of posts probably since then, but a lot of companies were forced to address the issue. The NFL says we're wrong. Look, this is Netflix, has nothing to do with boxing. And this all happened right after Paulie Maligaggi said there was no racism in the world, or whatever he was saying. Netflix says to be silent is to be complicit. Black Lives Matter. We have a platform and we have a duty to our black members, employees, creators, and talents to speak up. So this made Paulie Maligaggi, this was May 30th. Paulie's comments started pouring in the interview, probably early May, late April. So again, weeks after he starts saying this foolish stuff, you've seen what happened in the world. You've seen around the world, people gathered around, and BLM movement gets stronger. Companies like Netflix, $1 trillion companies, were forced to address the issue. So how can Paulie say that there's not an issue? How can Paulie not feel he needs to respond with an apology? Kind of makes you wonder. Now, here's some detailed comments from Paulie Maligaggi. Paulie says, and I quote, you'll see it on the screen, boxing has had its course in history with certain demographics dominating more than others, right? He says maybe like 100 years ago, Irish fighters were better. And then the Jews and the Italians came in. I think African-American fighters became most dominant in the sport in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. What is this man talking about, bro? I grew up in this generation, and he says even the 90s. What about the 2000s? Because growing up in the 90s and 2000s, the best fighters, the consensus best fighters, were guys like Roy Jones Jr., Lennox Lewis, and also Floyd Mayweather after Roy Jones Jr. So he says, I think the African-American fight, he thinks the African-American fighter became most dominant in the sport in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. What about the 2000s? Mayweather is this generation's best fighter, and he's African-American. So what is Paulie even talking about? And then he says it's the Eastern Europeans that has become the dominant species in boxing. I think stating something like Haney's statement could be very dangerous. He says the dominant species, but again, you can't just arbitrarily put things out there with no facts to back it. So what Eastern European came over and took over the globe, and he's marginalizing it like everything's black and white. What about Mexican fighters? It's not just black fighters and white fighters, unless that's how he feels in his mind. So what is he talking about? And he says the European, and he said last time I checked, the best fighters were white and Eastern European and European. But what happened when Joshua, who's European, but he's black European, he fought Klitschko, a Ukrainian guy. He knocked him out. He fought Povetkin of Russia. He knocked him out. The guy that beat Joshua was a Mexican American guy from the USA. So it's like Paulie, everything he's saying is baseless. Like there's no real tangible facts to what he's saying. He didn't provide examples. And again, Paulie has made a career of being the motor mouth and the guy that's, always talking and opinionated and freedom of speech and stuff. But it gets to the point where you got to still make sense. And we live in a society. You can't. You said what you said about Pacquiao. Some people agree. Some people disagree. You said what you said about Canelo. Some people agree. Some people disagree. But this stuff has nothing to do with even boxing. You're trying to take on a broader scope. Like part of it has something to do with boxing, saying the Eastern European is more dominant species, which sounds ridiculous if you ask me. Not saying there's no good Eastern European fighters, but it's like, where did that come from? Like I said, Crawford beat a guy from Ukraine. He hasn't lost to a Ukrainian. There's a guy from Lithuania, Igis Kavalauskas. He just beat him down. It was a good fight. Mean Machine, he did all right in the early half, but Crawford in the end beat him. So what example is Paulie giving us? And again, why take down the video? Why is the video not up if you didn't do anything wrong? If you're going to go 10 toes down, leave the video up. Why do you or your representation take the video down? None of this stuff is making sense. So Paulie, like I said, this is going to be a multiple part video. He just crossed the line and, somebody checked him on it and he didn't want to back down. So that's the end of his career. Again, there's a lot of people who they don't know what they're talking about. They're not versed. It's not just the IFL interview where he's speaking on Devin Haney comments, which again, you leave me in the comment what he's even talking about, saying that anybody's the dominant species. Like I said, what if Charlo beats Derevyanchenko, which I'm favoring him to do? Then how is it the dominant species? Give me the example of Eastern European or European fighters that just took over and made black and Mexican fighters obsolete. It's baseless, like gibberish. This is what Paulie said. I believe racial oppression is all made up and exaggerated in 2020. Literally, he said this. It wasn't on that interview, but he said this. And right after that, weeks later, Ahmaud Arbery, right? George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and they have whole Instagram pages just full of Karens and Kevins and people, saying malicious and racist things and vitriol and venom to Asian people, to Mexican people, to black people, all types of Karen. And he's saying is made up and exaggerated, on some real Trump stuff. He's saying it's made up. So Dave Chappelle, after George Floyd died, he died after having a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. He came out with this YouTube comedy special addressing this. Dave Chappelle, 8:46. Why? So he just did that for no reason. Like, everything I'm seeing in this picture and these murals that are being built is all exaggerated. These guys being complicit in this horrific act, that's all make believe. That's what I'm supposed to believe because Paulie said it. That is racial oppression is all made up. That's like saying the Holocaust is not real. Only in the black community is the feelings of the black community so undeserving, and so like there's no attention paid to it. It doesn't matter what you think, or we don't have to please you, we don't have to do right by you. It's just expendable. Paulie knows he's wrong, bro. But let's finish with this. He says, master knowledge, well said. Proper perspective means looking at the numbers and how they compare to what happens to other people of other multiple races, right? Spoken like a true Karen. I think America and the world has a classism problem that might be considered is on a systematic level, but racism on a systematic level in America is not only gone. He says it's gone. Look, this is why Showtime fired him, bro. He says on a systematic level, but racism on a systematic level in America is not only gone, it's long gone. Long gone. Though on an individual case, you certainly will find cases of racism against various people. So he's saying as a whole, this is not a big problem. It's just, sprinkles here and there. But we just keep seeing these Karen videos back to back to back. We keep seeing police brutality and, cops going into a person's house, cops killing and tasering a pregnant woman until she dies, and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And he's talking about classism. This man has lost it. It's long gone, individual cases, blah, blah, blah. He says classism, I believe, is more of a problem than racism, but people fail to analyze it deep enough. And this is from your boy, Paulie Maligaggi. And all he had, bro, he's lucky that Viacom CBS even gave him the opportunity to apologize. Listen, we live in such a time where you can't just say what you want and expect to hurt people's feelings and, just outright be nasty and promote racism, anything like that. All this stuff. People are losing their jobs. You see it. You about to lose your job. You see it all through the world. Paulie, he got too big for his britches. He thought he was above it. This man is saying systematic racism doesn't exist. It's classism. So I pulled it up for you so you guys can see. Classism, noun, prejudice against or in favor of people belonging to a particular social class. We know that is BS because, again, if it's classism and you're prejudiced against someone, against a certain social class, how is this man gunned down while jogging? How do you know Ahmaud Arbery, who gets pulled up on by multiple vehicles and trucks and then ends up getting killed because people are on some vigilante racist shit, right? How do you know what social class he was jogging? How do you know what social class he belongs to? Right? I just seen an interview with Will Smith. He said he'd been called the N-word way over 5 times. And some of that probably happened when he was first coming up. Now he might be too big and everybody knows who Will Smith is. So, he probably doesn't run into it the same. But you see pro fighters, look at police. You look at Tupac. He was jaywalking. This is Tupac Shakur. So certainly he was with Digital Underground and he was a popular rapper even back then. But the cops didn't know who he was because he wasn't Tupac all the way. You know what I'm saying? Like all eyes on me, Pac. So they beat him down for jaywalking right here in my backyard, Oakland, California. Right. and he won a lawsuit settlement. You see his eyes swollen shut. So if it's about classism, then of course Tupac Shakur was doing well for himself at this particular time, where he was assaulted by the police for something as menial as jaywalking. Minuscule charge, and then they beat him down and smashed his face in the gravel till he blacked out. So he's of a higher social class and a social standing. He's making more than other people's parents make, through rap and entertainment. Yet and still, he was still a victim of police brutality. So that's not classism. That's not classism. Like I said, if you see someone jogging, you don't know what social class. You usually have a tracksuit, joggers and stuff like that, sweats and earbuds, AirPods or something in your ear. So you don't know what social class they belong to just from looking at them. I see people in San Francisco all the time. They live in those millionaire, $1 million crazy vista views and beachfront views. And, some people live in the Oakland Hills and all types of stuff, and they dress chill. You even look at guys look at most of the guys, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, dude from Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. They dress like regular. They wear a Nirvana shirt like I'm wearing right now. And they not run into no problems with the cops. So you don't know just by looking at somebody, unless you're profiling, you don't know what social class they belong to. And this man talking about is classism, prejudice against or in favor of people belonging to a particular class. If the particular class is your skin color, then that's something different. That's racism, bro. So Paulie is very misguided. I'm going to do multiple parts on this. And this is a great picture because this is two people who are working with premier boxing champions that have now alienated themselves and lost that bag and no longer working with PBC and Showtime and had a good thing going. They were just eating, making money, putting on good fights, calling and commenting good fights, and they're both out of the equation. So hope they enjoy that. As for there's some people who are saying, oh, it's good that Paulie Maligaggi got laid off or fired or whatever from Showtime. He could just go Sky Sports full time. He can go to DAZN. Good luck with that. Because with the comments from Paulie Maligaggi, we're going to follow this and we're going to make sure, bro, if DAZN picks up Paulie Maligaggi and he hasn't apologized, then good luck. We'll see how many people subscribe to DAZN. And that's my word. We'll see. We'll do a national boycott. We'll see how I dare DAZN to pick up Paulie Maligaggi with this on his jacket right now. If you want them type of problems, go for it. Invite this person to your platform. An apology is owed from Paulie Maligaggi. If Sky Sports and DAZN want to use him, we'll see how successful they become in the United States of America. We doing this the USA way. We doing it the American way. Shout out to Showtime. I'm sure it was a hard decision. Paulie used to be a very good commentator, in my opinion. But somewhere along the way, his true colors came out or he lost his way. And we'll talk about some of the biased commentary towards Gervonta Tank Davis, Charlos, and Deontay Wilder, of course, famously. And he sold out to the UK, in my opinion. Started working with the UK, doing BT Sports and Sky Sports and stuff. And then he just started feeling he could say whatever he wanted. Why would anybody who is black, when this man is saying systematic racism does not exist, why would you want Paulie calling your fight? Why would Charlo want that? Why would Deontay Wilder want him to? That's why he left probably and went to Fox. Biased commentary. If this is how the man is thinking, some people say, oh, I don't care. I just care about his boxing mind. But if his boxing mind is corrupted by his personal thoughts on a race of people, or this is how he feels and this is how he internalizes it, and he doesn't believe that racism is a real thing, then how can I expect him to give fair, unbiased commentary for a dark-skinned black fighter like Deontay Wilder? And shout out to Showtime because Paulie stood his ground. So DAZN, good luck with Paulie if they pick him up. But Showtime, I give him props because Paulie wants to stand his ground and he doesn't feel he did anything wrong. Cool. He didn't do nothing wrong. Then, go down with the ship. What Paulie says, bro, it just, none of this stuff makes sense. He talking about the dominant superior species. Then why didn't Kovalev beat Andre Ward? He had 2 chances, right? If the European white fighters and Eastern European white fighters are so dominant, why none of them beat Floyd Mayweather? Costa Zoo, he ducked Floyd Mayweather, in my opinion. Floyd called him out. He called De La Hoya out, Shane Mosley out. Ricky Hatton, that's a white European British fighter. It's so many, and I'm going to save that for another part because I want to break this down in kind of segments. It's so many things that he said doesn't make sense, but we'll keep unpacking it new media style. You have to also look at the whole reason that he even brought this stuff up was because of Devin Haney's comments about I won't lose to a white boy. But even if you analyze and unpack those comments, why did Lomachenko, an Eastern European Ukrainian guy, former USSR, how come instead of fighting Devin Haney, the African American obsolete guy, according to Paulie Maligaggi, who has been overtaken, and conquered by the Eastern European or the white fighter, then why didn't the white Eastern European fighter fight the African American fighter, Devin Haney? Explain that. Or a fighter from Kazakhstan, hey, no guys, I'm Max, Triple G. He had that WBC strap at middleweight, and Jamal Charlo was barking up his tree. And him nor Canelo fought him. But since Paulie's talking about guys from, Eastern European or guys who were categorized as white fighters, then why didn't Triple G fight Jamal Charlo? See, it's easier and therapeutic to just say these old media talking points rather than to have to explain them, get into detail. Why, if the African American style or the American style is now discontinued, or the Eastern Europeans have, got a read on Americans, then you should see Eastern Europeans atop of the division, in every division, right? They should be conquering black and Mexican and Puerto Rican, etc. If what he's saying is true, but what he's saying is not true, right? There's good fighters, again, from all walks of life. And we'll get into this further and further in open this conversation that Paulie Maligaggi. And again, why is the video? Why do they take the video and private it and hide it? People already heard it, Why hide the video? You did nothing wrong, right? I don't hide my videos. I don't delete nothing. All my videos are still up. The only time I've ever taken a video down is when it was at the request of a fighter. Like I had a fighter, I'm not going to say no names, but I had footage of them being knocked out, and it was on my channel. It wasn't just the knockout. It was the whole night of fights. I had some footage and stuff, and they messaged me and privately asked me to take the video down. You know what I'm saying? Just because they didn't want that out, trying to get fights. They don't want that floating around the net. So I did it. But I don't take down my videos because everything I say, I mean. Paulie Maligaggi, apparently he lives by that same creed. What he says he meant, but it don't make sense. And he can't explain it. I know he can't explain it. I just gave you several examples, So we'll see. I want to see if DAZN or Sky Sports try to pick up Paulie Maligaggi without an apology and just put him on air like, oh, okay, take over. Good luck with that, because what he did was offensive. And if you're cool with alienating new media and Eagles Army fans and all the people who don't like the reprehensible comments that he's made and the remarks he's made, and you just want to just put him on, he has talent as an MC, as a commentator, but he's crossed the line. An apology is owed. He should have just gave Showtime an apology and then kept getting that bag, in my personal opinion. But, people are prideful and they don't want to do it. But again, if you're a black fighter like Deontay Wilder, why would you want him calling your fight anyway? So Wilder's just screaming on the interview, talking about to this day, yo, people too. That's an easy conflict. That's a conflict of interest. And bro, just analyze what I'm about to say. I have so much to say on this topic. New media. I appreciate y'all. We unpacking everything. This is live freestyle. This is not scripted. I'm about to go crazy. Listen, smash the like button. Paulie worked for Showtime Boxing. If what he was saying was actually true and provable, then how come Showtime Boxing has a ton of African-American stars? Not just African-American stars, but they have a ton. They had Deontay Wilder. They've had and hosted Jamal Charlo. They've hosted fights with, who else was I going to say? Gervonta Tank Davis, right? And name how many Eastern European stars they have. Shouldn't everybody in the world just be so fascinated with the Eastern European style? Like, I know it was PBC. I don't know if it was Showtime, but I believe Dimitri Bivol has fought on Showtime before. And there's other guys. So shouldn't they all, according to Paulie's world that he lives in, shouldn't they all be the biggest stars? If they're the superior species, then why doesn't Showtime box? Why is Jermell and Jamal Charlo on pay-per-view and Gervonta Tank Davis on pay-per-view as the headliner, as the A side, and they're all African-American fighters? If what Paulie is saying is true, shouldn't the dominant species be getting all the exposure and all the fanfare and, you know, all the branding and headlining the pay-per-view if what he said was true? You got to ask yourself these questions. I remember Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder fought on the same night as Sergey Kovalev, who's from Russia, and Igor Mikhelkin. You guys look it up. They fought in March 3rd, 2018. Wilder on Showtime with Luis Ortiz, an Afro-Cuban, did great numbers on Showtime. Over a million viewership on Showtime. It was like one of the highest for that particular year, non-pay-per-view or whatever, or just in general. And Sergey Kovalev was on HBO with Igor Mikhelkin. That's a complete, you know, white Eastern European main card. And it did lousy on HBO, excuse me. Sergey, I don't even know how to spell Mikhelkin. Hold on. I'll see if I can pull it up. This was on the same night. Same exact night. I don't know how to spell Mikhelkin. Bear with me. This is the guy. Kovalev did horrible ratings with this guy. Kovalev viewership. Let me put that. Look. Kovalev Mikhelkin watched by a peak audience. That's the peak, bro. That was a doubleheader and there's a peak. So you see how they try to put some trickery and put the peak number, 674. But it averaged 599. 500. And that had Dimitri Bivol on HBO. HBO has more built-in subs than Showtime. And this is the numbers it did. And this was one of the decisions that I believe led to HBO's departure in boxing, because they started getting beat by Showtime and they seen that this is a bust. You know, Wilder's fighting Luis Ortiz. We have more built-in subscriptions and they're doing better viewership. Boom. This is Wilder. Wilder did 1.2 million on the same night against Luis Ortiz, an African-American fighter and an Afro-Cuban fighter, right? They did over 1 million on the same night. And there was a UFC fight that night, you know? Let me see what was on. Bro, my memory is crazy. March 3rd, 2018. There was a UFC. Boom. Chris Cyborg. I think this was the card. Yeah. There was a UFC card, I remember. So they had to compete with HBO boxing and they had to compete with this card, right? At the T-Mobile Arena. Headlined by Chris Cyborg, right? And Wilder still pulled out 1 million views. But the superior species, according to Paulie, that everyone should be interested in is the Eastern European fighter. So I just, again, tell me this whole domination, this domination that he's referring to, because I'm not seeing it. And while you're at it, tell me how systemic racism doesn't exist in this world. Bro, you know that's a lie. And Paulie, the way he went about it is ignorant, because what he said, he was instantly proven wrong with, again, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and situations like the big George Floyd situation weeks later, and he still tried to double down. It's okay as a man to be like, if your heart is pure, if you're not like on some racist or biased tip or whatever, and as a man, just be like, damn, I made these comments and, you know, I was wrong. I didn't realize how bad the problem was. And people could have let that slide. Some people might not have let it slide because you said what you said. But Showtime tried to give you an opportunity to do that. And you, even though you see it, you have to see it. The whole world's seen it, you know. Look at all the BLM. They were doing it in Amsterdam and in the UK. Anthony Joshua, who Paulie clearly loves the UK so much. Joshua was reading poems at Black Lives Matter functions and stuff like that. But yet and still, Paulie, you know, he wants to be stubborn. So go down with the ship. So we'll see what's next. We unpack. That's my thoughts. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I had to fully go in. This was probably longer than I expected, but I still got more heat. So holla, we working.
What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more sports. Get unlimited access to premium content with an ESPN Plus subscription. ESPN Plus offers a variety of content, including specials, behind the scenes, docuseries like Bruce Lee's Be Water, and much more. With an ESPN Plus subscription, you get access to a ton of classic archive fights and replays from boxing and the UFC. Big names like, "Hi, I'm Mike Tyson. Come and watch my fight." Floyd Mayweather, "Easy work. I'm rich." And Manny Pacquiao, "Yes, it's up to my promoter. Just to name a few. If that's not enough, you could get the ESPN bundle, which includes ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus. All three apps, one low price. You don't want to miss out. Make sure you guys click that link in the description box of all of my videos. Ego signing off.
So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.